Okay. Hello everybody, my name is Sarah Larkin and I will be your chair for this session. Is everybody ready for some good talks? Yes, great. Okay, so first we have Carl for biochemical feedbacks. Can we all give him a warm welcome?
Okay, good afternoon again, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Microhabitable Planet course that we've been running today for the Core Lecturers Training Workshop. So we started off all that way back at the start of the day where we set up Earth as being maybe the habitable planet because it was the right distance from the sun, if you can remember all that way back. And we saw that Mars was too cold, Venus was too hot. We set up a simple model to test it. We found that it was wrong. Earth should be freezing cold. It was just a ball of rock a given distance from the sun. And so since then, we've been trying to examine this question. Why is Earth the only habitable planet we know, by slowly adding in detail after detail after detail that's needed to understand it? And we got through, we added an atmosphere, an ocean, we made them move. We then looked at modeling, how we can model these things. We then came on to introducing life and finding out that actually you can't explain why the planet is habitable without life. We found out for several reasons. Firstly, because of photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is the process that plants use the sun's energy and water to make carbohydrates, energy for us all. And the byproduct of it is oxygen, which we all breathe. So that's quite obvious. So then we could maybe think, well, all right, fine. A planet would be habitable if it just had plants, right? So they're the ones that are needed. We could just have one species of plant. Then we got this next talk on biodiversity, where they told us that actually one single species ecosystems are not resilient to change. So we'll go find out shortly that the planet is under constant change. So it wouldn't work if we just have one species. And in fact, the more species you have, the more resilient the planet becomes to change, so-called biodiversity. So we actually need biodiversity for life to survive on a changing planet. And then, so as well as biodiversity, we saw that not just the survival is helped by it, but that actually chemicals are passed through food webs and food chains and recycled, and we call that biogeochemical cycles. And so life needs energy from the sun. That isn't recycled. We luckily have a constant source of it. But then it needs all sorts of nutrients, from carbon to oxygen to nitrogen to phosphorus to sulfur. And we saw that all of those get recycled so that life can continue. The next talk is on biogeochemical feedbacks. And it's a really interesting departure point from how the planet is commonly viewed. Because we're taught at school, and we tend to think of it almost all the way until we hear this talk at Habitable Planet, obviously, that life on Earth is impacted by changing climate. I just said, right, complex ecosystems are needed to build resilience to a changing climate. We're going to find out how the climate has changed just now. We don't really think about life as the thing that drives the climate. But in biogeochemical feedbacks, we hear about the work of a very famous scientist called James Lovelock, who published in the 1970s something called the Gaia hypothesis. And in the Gaia hypothesis, he conjectured, whatever. He said, he put forward the idea that actually there are many ways by which biology and living things affect the climate system, and in fact affect all parts. So the biogeochemical cycles, life has an impact on rocks and geology, and we saw it being cycled. We also saw the biogeochemical cycles are implicitly linked to the atmosphere. And so Lovelock said, life isn't just a passenger on the planet, right? It's actually in the driving seat. It's the thing that makes weather and climate happen the way it does. It controls the temperature, it controls the clouds. And so in biogeochemical cycles, what we do is we find out about a whole bunch of these pathways, most of which, it has to be said, were discovered by Lovelock himself or his collaborators, by which life actually impacts and changes and sometimes regulates the climate. And James Lovelock went on further to say that this is actually, life is actually the reason why the planet's habitable. And he said he was working for NASA at the time. NASA had asked him to try and decide whether there was life on Mars or other planets. And they expected him to come back with, some expensive instruments that they could send to Mars to find this out. And actually, he came back with just a one-line answer that all you have to do is look at it. He said, you can tell Mars is dead because it looks dead. If you take the Martian atmosphere and you lock it in a box and you leave it there for 100 years, it's exactly the same. Nothing changes. It's all at equilibrium. And you can see that in Mars. It looks, there's nothing happening. It's completely stationary. Whereas on Earth, if you take a box of air and you lock it for 100 years, it will be completely different. Why? Earth isn't at equilibrium because the chemicals that life makes are filled into the atmosphere. They're energetic, they're non-equilibrium chemicals. They're perturbing it up. Clouds and weather and storms and oceans, he says, those are products of life. Those are products of a planet not at equilibrium. It isn't being allowed to come to equilibrium because life keeps adding energy to the ecosystem. It's a very controversial hypothesis. Some people who give the talk often point out that whereas there are lots of ways that the biogeochemical cycles control the climate to be nice, there's also lots of examples where biology controls its local environment to be nasty. For example, rainforest leaves are particularly acidic. They do that to poison the soil and stop new trees growing. The old trees deliberately disrupt the ecosystem. There's loads of examples of that. So even though James Lovelock can cite lots of ways in which the plants and animals make the climate favourable, there are also some ways that they don't. Who knows which outweighs the other? But it's an interesting idea, and it's an important realization. Life is not just a passenger in climate, life has an active role in climate in a huge variety of ways.
Thank you, Carl. Does anybody have any feedback or questions on that quick, brief talk? Anybody? No? Okay. So should we swiftly move on to the next talk? It's entitled Paleoclimate by C and Apiwal. Can we give them a big welcome? Thank you.
Okay, right. Hi, everyone. This is C, and this is Apiwa from Walter Sisulu University. I'm from UKZN. We're going to be presenting to you on paleoclimate. This is just a brief overview of it's more like a layout of what we have included in our presentation. So guys, the topic is paleoclimates, paleo meaning ancients, and climate meaning persistent with weather conditions over time. And paleontologists, they use imprints known as proxies to interpret paleoclimate. There's a lot of variety of proxies, but due to time constraints, we're going to focus on the 4 which I was going to explain. An important factor on this is the time scale. We have different time scales. You can look at decades, you can look at millennia, centuries, and so on. If you look at a different time scale, you're going to have different interpretation of how the climate has changed. Since we know, I think we are all in a consensus that the climate is changing, right? Yeah. No one against climate change, yeah? So the climate is, you're against climate change? Because it's yours, fine. We know that the climate is changing, so we want to ask if these changes have happened in the past and what caused those changes. When we know that, we're going to then analyze how those changes in climate affected life on Earth, and then are they the same changes that are happening now, and is it the same cause, and how and what do we expect to happen in the future as a response to the current climate change? Right. So why must we even care about climate change? A lot of people have come to the front and they've touched on the biogeochemical cycle. And Carl just touched on the Gaia hypothesis, which in short says that everything living and non-living on Earth is interconnected to the other. So you can't just care about the one thing and say, hey, I don't care about the industrial corporatists and I only care about the plants because I'm a botanist. Your plants are affected by those industries because those industries produce the CO2 that your plants needs in order to help us to produce the oxygen that we breathe. You cannot care for the hydrosphere if you're a botanist because the plants need the water from the hydrosphere to survive. Without water, what's your plant going to be? So every one little thing in the universe, living and non-living, are interconnected. So you need to care about climate. whether you're a botanist, zoologist, chemist, or whatever you are, you need to care about the climate. So we have studied paleoclimatology, and why is paleoclimatology useful to us? Because we are concerned that the climate is changing. We need to understand the change in order to survive the change. So in order for us to understand what's happening now and what's going to happen in the future, we need to go back in time and see what happened. So paleoclimatology explains to us the rates of past climate change, so we can compare those to now and see what's going to happen. We can see the causes. They were more likely natural because we were there at the time, and then we need to compare to the causes that are happening now with the current climate, and then we need to predict the future because we still have lives and more generations of humans coming into the earth. So we need to know what's going to happen and then plan for that upcoming change. Right. So the key to the future lies in the past. So we do know that the earth was not always habitable, and how do we know that? Because of paleontologists, right? So that what you see there is a geological time scale. Yes, we see the difference. Okay, this time the data source is just the fossils that are buried in the ground. So paleontologists, they can dig up the ground and then they see what sort of life existed in which time period. They can also date these, and then we know when this was and what sort of organisms were there. Because we have a great biodiversity, as that has been explained to us, we have a great biodiversity now. We look at what sort of species prefer what sort of climates, and what sort of climates do they prevail on and which are unfavorable. So we know that information now, and then we go to the past to study our fossils and see this is the type we have, this is similar to this, so the climate must have been like that. But fossils are not the only source, there's a lot more which Apiwa is going to get into. Right. So paleoclimatology data that is going to be explained by Apiwa in detail using only 4 examples. I have a lot there. There's a lot that paleontologists use. They use borehole, they drill down the earth and measure the temperatures at different layers. We can use fauna, the fossil that I just explained. They can use charcoal for fire and tree rings and everything. Now I'm going to hand over to Apiwa for a clearer explanations on the processes and the data from the past.
Thank you, Spur. As Spur said, that I'll only deal with 4 proxies. That is the organisms, which include both the foraminifera and also the diatoms. And I'll also deal with the rings and the ice cores. Firstly, let me start with the organisms. The organisms, in organisms, there are 2 organisms which are used, or rather commonly used. That is the foraminifera and the diatoms, that represent as proxies. Then, these 2 organisms are shelled organisms, in which the forams or the foraminifera, the foraminifera shell is made up of the calcium carbonate, and the diatom shell is made up of silicon dioxide. Now, these 2 organisms live on the benthic zone. Then, when they die, they leave their shells behind. Then, and they're found on lakes and also in the bottom of the sea. Then, on these shells, can, or rather, they can predict the formation or on these shells with the soil chemistry and the time in which these shells were formed. Moving on to the 3 rings. The 3 rings can be used as proxies in terms of, like, if we count the 3 rings on their own, they can determine the age of the tree, and also the thickness of the ring on itself can determine the amount of precipitation and the amount of temperature which that particular tree received in that particular time. And the scars and band marks, they represent the features that has occurred in the past, such as the fires. Moving on to, all right, this image in here represents a certain place whereby there was represents the terrains whereby there was a lack of water in that place. This yellowish line which represents drought, although the fluctuation simply means that there was water, but at that time there was a drought. Moving on to the ice cores. Basically, the ice cores and the polar glaciers seem to be interrelated. Now, the paleoclimate, or people cite the paleoclimate recorders to record the climate or rather to record the climate that happened in that short time, that is in the past, so that we can learn about them in our recent time. Secondly, these ice cores are analyzed using the stable isotope approach for water, and why are they analyzed? To record or to look at the trapped gas that was established or was there in that ice core, or rather in that ice at that particular time, and also to determine the pollen that was trapped in that ice, and also the stable isotope ratios. And the stable isotopes that are commonly used is the oxygen isotopes. The oxygen isotopes we have two of them. That is oxygen with 18 atoms, which is the heavy oxygen, which is mostly used to record the past climate. That is, if the proxy was taken years back, we can determine it by this heavy oxygen isotopes, and they are mostly found in cold climates. Secondly, we have the oxygen with 16 isotopes, which is the lighter one than 18, and this one is found in warmer temperatures, and it's the common one. It's found in the warmer temperatures. That is the evaporation. It is easy to evaporate than the oxygen with 18 isotopes. Then oxygen ratio, they are used as the thermometer to the climate. That is, we use the proxies to predict the past climate, not that we use the oxygen now to predict the past. Now moving on to the glaciers and the interglacials. As you see in the diagram, we have the proxies put in that way, or rather the indicators which basically indicate the warmer climates, if I put it that way. That is the oxygen, the nitrogen oxide, the methane, and these are all represent, they all represent the warmer temperatures. And if you can look at the fluctuations, which simply means that in that there was one temperature which causes the glaciers to dissipate, the glaciers to dissipate, and leading to the interglacial period. Moving on to the causes of the solar, or rather the climate, the causes of climate to change. One, I'll look at the changes of the solar output. And then the changes of solar output, we'll look at both of these two pictures. And here, that is, one, the solar radiation is emitted by the sun to the earth. Then here, okay, that can be affected by also the Milankovitch cycle. If you see that eccentricity, there's a cycle and this elliptical shape. Then the two different things. When the radiation reaches the first cycle, the radiation is of there's much radiation in here as compared to here. So it is much hotter in here than here. And also the changes in Earth orbit, whereby this is I'll deal with this when I talk about the Milankovitch cycle. And the changes in the distribution of condense, which is basically deal with the different plates. Then the changes in atmospheric content of the greenhouse effect. Yes, in the past there were greenhouse effects, or the greenhouse gases, but not as compared to the present time that we have now. Moving on to the Milankovitch cycle. As Milankovitch stated that the variation in the movement of the Earth's orbit causes the climate to change. Now we have three cycles in the Milankovitch cycle: the eccentricity, we have the precision, and also the tilt. starting with the eccentricity. In the eccentricity basically deals with the shape of the Earth as the Earth orbits. Yeah, but it creates a cycle shape, but as it orbits now, it will create an elliptic shape, whereby you will see this when Earth is in this pole shape, will be much closer to the sun, and then in this phase it will be like far away from the sun. That is, this will receive more of the radiation, and they will receive less of radiation. Moving on to the tilt. The tilting basically causes the seasons. Now, as the seasons are formed, or rather, as much tilt on the Earth will cause the season to cause the difference between the seasons, and also the precision of the warmth. And the precision is so by the Earth just warms on its axis. Then when each warms on its axis, if the sun strikes this particular place, there will be 24-hour daylight here, and there will be 24-hour darkness. And also moon, and also there's this picture here, which symbolizes the combination of the three to form this solar force in India. And Stella will just carry on with the presentation.
Okay, guys, on the previous slide, my partner showed how the Milankovic cycles, precision, obliquity, and eccentricity influence the stages of glaciation. When they're all at peak, you can see we have an interglacial, and then as everything decreases, we have an ice glacier. So I'm just going to take you through a few significant events that happened in the past that we have established through using paleoclimatological data and proxies. So we have one, the Younger Dryas, which happened about 13 to 18,000 years ago, and it took about 700 years. It was an age of recent cooling after a lot of a water period, and then there was this cooling, and then there was a boom in the population of the Dryas shrub, which is a shrub that prefers cooler climates. And then we had a little ice age up in the northern hemisphere, in the northern continents in Europe and some parts of North America, which happened like 1,300 years ago. And then the recent warming trend started about 15,000 years ago and coincides with the development of human civilization. Right. So this graph here is of importance. It's of importance because if you look at it won't show. If you look at the last 3 million years, sorry about that. The last 3 million years are basically much more affected by the way in which by the Milankovic cycles, and then the 3 million years and back is can be explained by plate tectonics, which we're going to have a talk on. And then there's a question now that we need to pose. Since we know that the climate has been continually fluctuating, we about 635 million years ago, which is assumed that there's some scientists said we have had a snowball Earth, and then there was fluctuations, and then suddenly we have this much global warming that is concerning everyone. Are we moving from a snowball Earth to a fireball Earth, and should we be worried about the current climate change? And open for suggestion is the heading for this slide. Whoever gets this right gets to go home with the boomers. Suggestions. Suggestions, people. What can we entitle this? Hormonal lady from South Africa. So that's why it's important to come to South Africa and study paleoclimates. We know that the first human life started here. So come here and find your hormonal ladies, your business place, and everything. There's a lot to find there. If you want to do paleoclimatology, you're in the right place. So yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you, Siphelile and Apiwe. Any questions or comments from the floor? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Any more? 5. Okay, number 1.
Very well done, guys. And I see that examples such as in the Riyadh, like for yesterday, you guys took it so hard. But then I think the live debate or suggest that somehow, I think it was much more easier to be able to have a video. So just sort of time yourself probably, especially if you try not to explain things in the beginning and then during and then sort of afterwards because it's sort of waste time. But otherwise, very good work, guys. I'm proud.
Okay, number 2.
Didn't see my number.
You were 4. Number 2.
Thank you for the nice presentation. I liked the fourth slide. I liked the third or fourth slide. I'm not sure about the number, but you are explaining the proxies under the organisms. You did explain most of the stuff. One thing that I would like you to do there is to emphasize more on how the shape of the fossils, the trace fossils on the rocks of the reefs, how their shapes were influenced by different climate temperatures and the sizes of the reefs.
Thanks for that good suggestion. Number 3.
Okay, guys, I think that is a lot, especially with speed, because I could find everything that was in the slide. However, there was a slide which was the causes of the past climate. It had at some point a yellowish color, like there was a point that had a yellowish color. It was a bit gray, I could not see it properly, so I suggest that in future you try to use it, you use a different color, like you try to use a color that is more visible, like, yeah, or make that yellow a bit more stronger because it was painted at some point. And then I think this one is a question when you explained about the oxygen isotopes. You said there's oxygen which has 18 atoms and the other one that has 16 atoms. And then you said the one that has 18 atoms is basically found in cold areas, and then the other one is found in warm areas. Now I'm asking myself, would it be justified to conclude that the oxygen with 18 atoms is the one that they're experiencing in the poles, and then along the equator is the one with 16 atoms?
Not to say they're distributed differently, but the way that what the isotope escape the water is through evaporation, and evaporation favors the light oxygen. So when there's more, when it's hotter, there's going to be more evaporation, hence more light oxygen escape. So if you find more light oxygen, you know, then that this you have a layer, you gauge your area, and then you know there's so much light oxygen here, it must have been hot.
Yeah, cool.
Okay. So firstly, once again, maybe once again notice that the presentation style was similar. They were both very loud, very clear, but incredibly fast. It was reminded me of the soccer commentator is getting balls getting goal. You know, it was lively, it's great, but both, you can calm down. I guess it's nerves. A little bit. Watch back on the video and see if you see what I mean, and then see if you can think about how to just calm down just a little bit, because the light is good. You want to be enthusiastic. So I almost felt nervous at one point. There's some beautiful slides and really nice illustrations. I really like, but I still feel like Milankovic could be better explained in animation. It's something that really lends itself to an animation, and there are lots of nice ones out there. My big thing on the content was proxies. It wasn't in your practice, you gave an explanation of what a proxy was, and then now you didn't. To avoid forgetting it, it probably needs a slide. I don't think them all up, right? So you can say there's loads of different proxies, because often you get creationists coming along saying, well, you know, if there's just isotopes, maybe that one thing could be wrong. So I know you've got loads. You showed there's actually hundreds of things we could use to tell about the past. But then the slide just goes, well, what is a proxy? And a good example to point out is that alkaline thermometer is a proxy. It's not something controversial, right? We use them every day. We don't actually measure temperature. We use the column of mercury or alcohol to measure temperature. It's a proxy. A really small point is that your isotopes, the superscript number goes on the left, not the right. So they were just a little mistake that needs correcting before the final one. animations, they need to be used sparingly. They can really get distracting. But for you guys, you had all of your bullet points coming in one at a time, but then you stood there at the start of the slide and made them all come in before you spoke. So why? Why have them animated? You're just going to stand there and press. Doesn't make any sense. To respond to Anna quickly, I think they can't do everything, right? I mean, there are hundreds of proxies they can talk about, from pollen to leaves to. I think it's fine if they just pick up on a couple. Nobody's going to agree on which couple they should pick up on. But in 15 minutes, what chance do you have?
Great. One last comment. I think we know 5.
I am of the call, right? Yeah. The presentation was very well. I like how you help one another. You were clear, audible, clearly. I loved your pictures. It was not nicer than mine. This is actually mine. Just a few suggestions. One of the things is just to reiterate what Paul said. To define the proxy, the probably best because you jumped, so no one knew what the proxy was and might have lost you over there. The other thing was perhaps plate tectonics and the Milankovitch cycle are natural climate change driving forces, right? So obviously plate tectonics, the talk afterwards is vital. So the slide that you guys show at the back, preferentially, would probably, in my opinion, I would put first, because that is kind of your, the crux of your entire talk. If you get what I'm saying. And the cycles, like also the Milankovitch cycle could have been, the cycles and everything could have been still more to detail. But other than that, you added new things and that was cool, so applaud that.
One more round of applause. Any one last comment? Yes,
All right, long time. I think your presentation is very, very interesting. You guys are very passionate, like you roll your stuff. Just like the that you work it out. So I really like the fact that you link up your talks with the books that are going to come to afterwards. So it's a nice good story, and you know where you kind of fit into the whole series. And my suggestion is that the last slide shows a picture of women identity. Maybe if you could move that slide and add one about fossil park on the list, so that's more relevant to the time. And then the woman identity one, I mean, that's more relevant to the person who's going to talk about true evolution. And the fossil park is very, very pertinent, especially when you talk about South Africa and what makes it special. So I think that's one of the relevant to the talk.
thank you for the feedback. One more last round of
Yes. Next talk rather than me doing it, we actually have the team that did it last year in the room, so I could make the crowd a quick summary.
So is that plate tectonics?
I think Steve and Megan.
Okay, great. So next up is plate tectonics by an unexpected crowd. Who's it by?
Caesar and Megan.
Caesar and Megan. There we go.
Yes.
Oh, okay. So you guys just heard about failure climate and failure climatology, and you heard about the Milankovitch cycle. So then you saw in that diagram that from I think 0 to about 63 million years, that that process is more for the Milankovitch, and then from 3 onwards to about 250 million years ago. That's quite vital to plate tectonics. So the whole theory behind plate tectonics is that the theory is that the Earth was once one continent, Pangaea, and then at some point in time they split apart, and that was done by Alfred Wegener, and he proposed that it's because of the puzzles, and he had a lot of evidence about it, which you can ask me about later. I said it before. And then the important guy that came along was Arthur Holmes. He basically just fitted the missing piece that Alfred Wegener was missing, which was the geological evidence, and he brought in convection cells, which is basically the circulation of hot magma rising and then cooling into the upper mantle. And that caused the plates to move apart and together, and those are divergence is apart, convergence together, and okay, how it affects climate change is the distribution of the land masses, which is probably very important for our talk. So the distribution of the continents is obviously because of the configuration of land. So there's restrictions of ocean currents, there's upliftment of mountains, so it's the direction of winds, and then obviously volcanoes, which emit methane and greenhouse gases that also play a role in climate change.
It's all.
Thank you very much, Caesar. I think Caesar owes an apology to Megan. That's what I wanted to say. Well done. So next up is Carl, I think. Are you doing the next one, or is there someone else doing human evolution of humans? Yeah. As far as I'm aware. Oh, you have. Is it you? Is it evolution of, is it you? Okay.
Say I rule you. Slow now. What's very full, very hot. Oh, Brian, your ring, but do you understand the ring, the damage? Yeah. Still doing breathing exercises. Oh yes, please do.
So while Ntombe and Muhle are just breathing, we'll give them another round of applause. And this is really exciting.
Hello everyone, I'm Ntombe from KZNP.
From Waterloo University.
We'll actually be discussing human evolution, and with this talk we'll try to simplify it as much as possible. So when someone says human evolution, a lot of questions just come to your head, like who are we humans, where did we come from, where are we going, and why is Earth such a habitable planet? Well, evolution as it is the origin, it looks at the origin of life. And then there are a lot of processes that actually drive it, such as climate change and genetic variation, or sometimes genetic frequencies, which includes mutation, natural selection, and outbreeding. Climate change is the one of the driving forces of evolution, goes back to human evolution, which tries to answer the question, who are humans, and then where do we fit in the natural cycle or in the timeline? This timeline that I was talking about, however, we will not be discussing everything else, only the part that we actually highlighted, such as the Australopithecus, the Homos, which my partner will continue to talk about. However, apes and humans share a common ancestor, primates. These primates here, we have different kinds of primates, lower primates and higher primates. Lower primates actually include this little fellow here, and anthropoids, which is the higher primates, includes us, humans, and apes, which means that us, apes, and humans are actually related, right? No, good guys. Okay, so they are not actually related because of the different processes that they have. So to sort of make an example of this tree, actually. So where do we come from? This is our common ancestor, which is our top which are primates. These here are the contemporary animals, which includes us, which includes apes, monkeys, and gorillas. These here are the fossils. Fossils, as we know, is that they try to fill up the missing links. So if you look closely here, there are gaps in between the tree parts, which means there are gaps that we do not, which shows that we do not have all the research that are here to actually understand how humans are related to animals and so forth. So human versus apes. As I said earlier on, there are different there are differences between apes and humans, which includes locomotion and the brain size. For example, the shape and position of the pelvis in humans is quite wide, which provides them to work with both of their legs, which means they're bipedal. Thank you. Then the gorillas or the apes actually are quadrupedal, which means that they have to walk on all their four limbs. Brain development also, humans are able to connect better, communicate with people, form languages and so forth, whereas gorillas cannot really communicate with it. And so let's go out of here. I don't know, I have to just demonstrate for them to leave the room. These are actually the photos that I was talking about, whereby this pelvis is quite narrow and is quite wide for humans. Also, the convergence of the big toe between a gorilla, there's a huge gap in between because they have to have balance as they're walking with all their four limbs. Whereas in humans, it's quite parallel to the other toes, which means that it will be able to support both of their legs. So why is Mzansi such a special place? Well, it's because of Australopithecus africanus, such as Mrs. Clare's, which is found, Mrs. Clare's son child, and Little Foot, which is found in the Stapleton caves in the cradle of humankind. Also, other cosines or sometimes related to the living fossils in South Africa, whereby they are actually originated from the Mossel Bay, and over time, in South Africa, they are the only indigenous group that are still in South Africa. My partner will continue to talk about the homos that we have in the world or in South Africa, let's say, and yeah, thank you.
The most common question that usually perplexes us as humans is, who are we? Where do we come from? What is our place in this universe? Now, human evolution was intrinsically initiated about 3.5 million years ago during the time when there was the Benguela upwelling. This initiated the human evolution and led to the appearance of the Australopithecus africanus about 3.5 million years ago. In fact, between 3.5 million years ago and about 2.5 million years ago. Now, the Australopithecus africanus, which you have here, was quadrupedal. Now, when I say quadrupedal, I mean it used both hind limbs and forelimbs in order to achieve locomotion. Now, Australopithecus was the first was the organism which led to the genus Homo. Now, Homo habilis. The Homo habilis first appeared during the extinction of the Australopithecus africanus, because when one species which is less evolved meets a species that is more evolved, naturally selection will take its place. And of course, the climate during about 3.5 million years ago, temperatures on Earth decreased, which affected the plants, which then forced the organisms to change to become bipedal. So Homo habilis was bipedal, which means it only used only his hind legs in order to achieve locomotion. Now we have Homo erectus. Homo erectus first appeared about 2.5 to about 1.5 million years ago. Homo erectus was the first of the genus Homo to use tools and use stone axes in order to hunt. Homo erectus is also known as the handyman because, of course, he was the first to use tools. Now, the Homo erectus displayed a larger cranial size, which means that his brain was bigger than the Homo habilis, and of course, it replaced Homo habilis because it was more evolved and it was more adapted to the environment. coming into the Homo Neanderthal. The Homo Neanderthal first appeared about 300 to about first appeared between 400,000 and 300,000 years ago. The Homo Neanderthal is said to have been bigger than the Homo sapien and had a larger cranial size and than the Homo erectus. The Homo Neanderthal was said to have practiced burial. So you can see that the Homo Neanderthal was more intelligent than the Homo erectus, hence it practiced burial. Homo Neanderthal became extinct about 5,000 years ago in Europe when it interacted with the Homo sapien, which is more advanced, which is more intelligent, because the Homo sapien was more adapted for hunting and other activities. Homo naledi. Now, Homo naledi was discovered in South Africa in 2013. The Homo naledi is said to have been very, very similar to Australopithecus africanus in terms of cranium size, but the Homo naledi was similar to the Australopithecus africanus in terms of cranium size, but its jaw was very similar to humans, which is why it might have a very profound effect on what we think about evolution today. The Homo naledi has not been dated yet, but if it was dated and found to be old, as in about like 2 million years, 2 million years old, then this would mean that it was part of the first. I repeat, it was part of the first of the several genus of Homo that inhabited Earth about 2 million years ago. Now, if it's found to be young, then Homo naledi would prove to have a profound effect on what we think about evolution today. Now, my colleague will continue.
Okay. Are we still evolving, as my partner already illustrated before? Are we still evolving? Well, in terms of micro evolution, yes, you are evolving, because if you remember in the first slide, I talked of gene frequencies, which include mutation and natural selection, which means that yes, we are changing or evolving in terms of micro evolution. However, in macro evolution with the A, it means that as formation of new species of new humans, we are not evolving, as far as I know. So, in terms of evolution in recent times, if you look at the TB, for example, the TB bacteria that one would have, the antibiotic, as we all know, is used to destroy any bacteria that's found in a human being. However, do you guys realize that when you take your medication, for example, antibiotics, if you're sick or you have a flu, and then you stop taking it because you feel you better, and then you continue taking them because your cough somehow came back, then you think that your antibiotics will work, they will not work because your body has now grown resistant to it. Same thing with malaria. You will find that the mosquito will bite people and stuff. However, people in other areas and not maybe in East Africa would not be okay. People in East Africa actually will be less resistant to malaria, or be less attacked. Will be more attacked by malaria in that area. Another thing could be because of time. I would say that sometimes in wisdom teeth, we don't have wisdom teeth now. Some people are born without them. Some people just somehow in their life just falls off, which means that we are still evolving. And sometimes we talk of evolving, do not only think of phenotype in terms of your body, in terms of your physical structure, but also in terms of genotype, and so what is inside in your genes or somehow in between there. In summary, we were just to say that modern humans did not evolve from apes, guys. No, we didn't. They're not our cousins. South Africa is also a diverse and special rainbow nation, because of the Australopithecus and so forth. And then the transition of species related to climate change has the change in the weather, or the melting down of the ice, meant that more humans were able to work on both things. So humans are continuing to evolve. And just to close off, in the future, it remains to be seen how we'll use this technology, such as the antibiotics, or how we'll use the malaria to cure malaria, the medication, how we'll use it to actually cure people of malaria completely instead of using DDT. Or just if we continue to have malaria and all these diseases, would the human species be extinct, or will we evolve into another species, or will the human species just the same as all the other groups before them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Antonio and Bushra. So we're limited to 2, maybe 3 questions if possible, but I see 4 hands, so let's make it very quick. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We might to take, I think, 3. Is that okay? Okay, very quick.
Okay, I think you guys are fantastic. I really like the way you help one another out. You guys are both entertainers. You guys are you both animated, so you just do more attention with the presents. One suggestion would be that graph. You know, no, you don't have the graph. It could be a collection for all the other talks. You know that graph that we use in paleochromatology, the same graph is used in plating physics, and there's also a point in plating in that graph which shows us regular evolution cells. So that could be a nice, a nice link between all of the that you can connect. Other than that, I feel like that's
Guys, we have to say goodbye to Zalani.
Oh, my God, just oh. Oh, it is so lonely.
Let me find something for the day. Kimberly.
Naked baby. Naked baby. Our neighbor is leaving us, guys. By now, all the UKs and students are crying, but it's fine.
Okay, should we maybe say one last
Oh, I'm crying. Yay. Oh, bye, Zalani. Bye, nataka kiss Lucy.
Okay.
Okay, so next question.
Yeah. But firstly, I'll try and be really quick. Firstly, I'm sure you both know you've got no problem with your presentation style. You're excellent. You get top marks. No problem at all. The slides are generally absolutely fine. No problem at all. And your teamwork was great. You guys bounced off each other. So let's get that all out of the way quickly because I want to move on. But really, first and foremost, this talk is often given excellently and reviewed by the students as absolutely shit. They get like 3 out of 10 on average because if you're not careful, you will get destroyed by creationists, right? It's a really hard one to do. I think Godfrey gives a brilliant talk on it. He got absolutely nobody gives a reason. It's just they hate you because you're talking about human evolution. But it can be done. Cizo managed to get her in. I think she scored top with it, which was quite incredible. But you've got a higher burden of proof for your stuff than anyone else. You've got to get it right. And there's points here that just have to be right. Firstly, you don't ever talk about what evolution is. You just roll into it. And so how are you going to win those people over if you just assume that everybody's going to be with you and we all know what evolution is? And that definitely needs to be there. And therefore, your other problems, I think a lot of them still have. Firstly, we are related to apes. You said we're not. And everybody's like, yeah, we are. Definitely. You can't make that mistake. We are, as you said, we're distant cousins. We're definitely related to apes. So that's got to go. We are. Secondly, there's no such thing as more or less evolved, and actually that's sort of harking back to social Darwinism kind of language that needs to be got out. I mean, evolution, if you think of it as a test, then it's a test against the mark scheme which continually changes your environment, right? Yeah. And what a winning test against one environment might be a 0 out of 10 in another environment. There's no more or less, it's subjective to the environment. For example, is Neanderthals, as you pointed out. By all accounts, if you do go to socialism, they are more evolved. They've got bigger brains. They invented music. They invented but they died out. If you don't want to say less evolved things died out, well, they didn't. More evolved. If we go there, died out. So just be careful with that. I don't think you can call people living fossils. That's really offensive. And so I think you have to be really careful. And again, what the creationists hate is that evolution for a while was used to justify racism in this social Darwinism, and that kind of harks back to the kind of language calling these people less evolved. They're not less evolved because there's no such thing. And again, you said South Africa's a bunch of homos. Again, it's kind of like, it's used in the right context, but it's bordering on homophobic. Just a lot to take on because you're putting yourself in, well, I'm putting you because I gave you the topic, but you have got a difficult topic where you've got to get it exactly right, so that needs typing up. But presentation style, slides, beautiful.
Thank you. I think your feedback is important. Yeah, I think you're first and then you, Peter.
Thank you for your presentation. Your enthusiasm is fantastic. Your voice is very loud and clear and straight. I've got a suggestion for you, and this is just a way to help you tell the story. So, with human evolution, what you're trying to basically to put across is the story of how the change happened. It's not a case of convincing us if we are related to apes or not, because evidence shows that we have a common essence that therefore we are related. And in order for you to be able to tell the story of how you relate, is to talk about natural selection and specifically those mechanisms which explain evolution and how we change and how we have a similar ancestor. And you listen, and that's the story of the beginning.
So what is evolution?
Yeah, so what basically are what is evolution? And if you're able to do that, then you move across and talk about what are the changes that occurred in order for evolution to take place. Because you must remember with evolution, the environment has to be such that an organism has got the propensity to change in order to live within that environment. So now you talk about that environment, and that's when you come into basic money. That way you're able to make another talk that can call you about the changing environment and why it's hard to like school and stuff like that, and how that influences human evolution, right? So that is going to help you be able to tell the story in the different ways. You start with defining evolution, natural selection, and the mechanism behind it. How we are related to other like Homo habilis and stuff like that, really tectonic, which is going to show you how the environment changed for us to be able to change. It actually forced us to change so that we could survive. And then that way you're able to tell a nice story and evolution was as far as I read this.
Thank you very much. Peter, last comment.
Yeah, great presentation. There's a lot of energy and passion in there. Just makes you feel that even more. If you can just slow down ever so slightly and be a tiny bit more slow and keep the energy going. And if you would make a little bit more eye contact or contact with the audience, just look more at us rather than to the side, and it'll be even, it'll put us in even more. And then one very last thing, I'm not quite sure, the mutation or evolution of it. Nowadays with bacteria, right, as an example, that if you talk of medication, your body gets used to it, but it's not that the bacteria actually has a chance to recreate. Yeah. So that was the example that you maybe wanted to make, but you didn't quite make that because you rushed to it because your body got used to it. So you kind of reached that point because it survives and then it mutates and then it gets resistant and it's got a better chance of survival in the environment, which is the harsh environment of medicine or medication.
Okay.
Thank you.
Peter, I'd like to go on now.
Just a small.
Sure.
I think on the point that you're in, I think when you report things like this, they're not very. I think be sure to say that this is not a fact. Like it's not an established truth. It's an opinion. So I think like you guys were very certain about what you were saying. Like there was no point of like this is really wanting thought of So I think just be careful about how you report and a bit of smart behavior.
Quickly, guys. This talk and the last talk and later comments, all three should show this slide. One connects to turnarounds. So, because one thing I realised you're missing as well is the link to climate, right? There wasn't really the link to climate, and this is what does it. So there's the 3 talks. There's paleoclimate, plate tectonics, and human evolution. I'll give you this. They're all summed up nicely on here. So firstly, for the last 3 billion years, you've got these ups and downs and ups and downs. This is the Milankovitch cycle. This is what paleoclimate talks about, right? We get more or less energy from the sun in these seasons. This is the paleoclimate talk. Ice age is not, ice age is not, ice age is not. Before that, we've got the age of the dinosaurs. It was hot and warm. Dinosaurs are roaming. There's no variations anymore. Why is that? It's because of geology, plate tectonics. That's the plate tectonics talk there. In the middle, what's this line? This is where hominids starts. Just here at the end of this cooling. Something about this cool world was what made humans evolve. And this is hominids. So this is, you can link in, I think this is your Homo africanus. Homo sapiens only happened here, this little warm period, right at the end. And so the hominids are evolving all through this cold climate, and then you can link it into the next talks by saying we put loads of CO2 into the atmosphere here, right? So it's threatening to go back hot, back to this one, the one that didn't favour human evolution. This is the what favoured dinosaurs, etc. So I think this is a really, really informative graph. I know some people don't like graphs, but I think you should go into all 3 of those talks because it links them all together and it speaks to the next ones which are going to come.
Thanks for the constructive feedback. One last round of applause. Cool. One more and then tea? Or 2 more and then tea?
I think we get 2 more, 3:30.
Okay, perfect. So next is Nene and Nonke, and they will be giving us climate change.
Oh, it's a little easy.
A quote by Albert Einstein: "Look deep into nature, and then you'll understand everything better." Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our presentation on climate change. I'm Nonke, and my wonderful co-partner is Uzanej. So basically, what we hope to address out of this presentation is 3 key questions. What is climate change? What are the impacts to climate change? And what are the solutions to climate change? So what is climate change? So basically, it's a change in the Earth's weather, including changes in temperature, wind patterns, and precipitation due to the increase in concentration of greenhouse gases. Now, the reason why we included temperature, wind patterns, and precipitation is that climate change isn't just about an increase in Earth's temperature, it's about a change in everything else as well. The Holocene period. Now, this graph shows a period in which Earth, before the Ice Age in this period, Holocene period was when there were massive changes to Earth, but Earth was still stable. So there was still stability on this planet. Now, the Industrial Revolution. This was a big marking point in history. With huge amounts of gas emissions and factories that we thrive on in this 21st century, we've created massive changes to the environment. If you look at this graph at the bottom, you see the relationship between temperature, methane, and carbon dioxide. So as the amount of methane and carbon dioxide, these emissions, are being released into the environment, what you're having is an increase in temperature, and you can see a direct
direct relationship between the three. Now, this was a period in which Earth, before the Ice Age in this period, Holocene period
Now the Anthropocene. We are now into a new epoch called the Anthropocene. Basically, the definition of it is massive changes caused by humankind onto the planet. Now, this graph was one of the marking points why the Anthropocene was coined. So in the 1950s, you had a famous scientist who he wanted to predict climate change. So he wanted to show how much carbon dioxide was being released into the atmosphere. And what you find is, as the years increase, you have a huge amount of carbon dioxide increasing. And this was a marking point showing that we are releasing harmful greenhouse gases into the environment, which are contributing to climate change. Now, climate change, hot or cold, there's a huge debate. Some people are saying yes, the earth is getting hotter. Some people are not. Some people are agreeing that sometimes, basically they're saying that yes, there is an ongoing debate that the earth is cooling. So this was a debate that occurred around in the 1970s, and it's been largely disregarded as there's so much evidence for climate change. My wonderful co-presenter will be carrying on about the impacts of climate change.
Thank you, wonderful partner. Climate change is a global problem, but its impacts are very personal. As my partner has said, that the concentration of these gases in the atmosphere is increasing, and that is causing the earth to be warmer. And that has negative impacts on our economy, on agriculture, on the environment, on water, and there is a melting of glaciers. There is rising of sea level. There is poverty, there is war, there is floods, there are droughts, and those have very negative impact on our economy. I will start with melting of glaciers. It is said that the glaciers are melting, and that could lead to that situation where we'll find the species that live in the freezing environment as the ice is melting, as they adapted to this environment that is freezing. So when the temperatures are increasing in their environment, that will lead to the extinction of those species. And these glaciers are very important for educational purposes due to the fact that there are many scientists that moves from different places to these areas to study how species have adapted and how things operate in that environment. When we move to agriculture, due to droughts and water shortages, the agriculture sector is facing a really great problem. And this is Northern Cape. As you know that here in South Africa, we're currently experiencing a drought, and that is putting a lot of strain on the livestock due to the fact that there is water shortages, there is no food for them to eat, and that is causing a really great problem. This is not in case the farmers are complaining that the animals don't have food and they are dying. And if you can see here, this is Free State province. Free State is known to be one of the provinces which are the economic driver of South Africa due to agriculture. Many farmers are situated in the Free State province. And now we know that the Great River, Orange River, it's been drying out. The water levels are so low. And Bloemfontein has been going without water for more than 2 weeks. Moving forward. As you can see that this was reported by the SABC News that thousands of livestock are still vulnerable due to drought conditions in South Africa. This picture was taken in the Eastern Cape, and things are very bad when we look at the situations of droughts. These are all the impacts of climate change. Even though climate change has negative impacts, but there are even positive impacts when we look at educational purposes, because many people are traveling to South Africa to study how things are. So we're receiving more tourists, and that contributes a lot to our economy. Climate change and politics. Scientists have been advocating for government to take charge and advocate for climate change. But has been a great problem since my partner has said that there's been a great debate whether is it natural or is it due to human activities. And President Barack Obama and Pope Francis have about to take charge to advocate for climate change. Last year, December, there was a World Assembly in Paris where the people all over the world have assembled in Paris to discuss the way forward. They bring ideas into climate change. This is still a problem. When we come to South Africa, there is a great challenge because climate change, poverty, which one is which? Which one are we going to go for? There is a child who needs a plate of food, and at the same time, we're advocating that let's practice sustainable development. This is a really great problem, and our government is not really focusing on climate change. It's looking forward to increase our economy, to improve, and that was a great debate when it comes to the developing nations in the COP21, because the developing nations are said that they must be considered because they need to develop, and there is climate change. So we are really facing a problem. Now my partner here will explain the mitigations and adaptations to climate change. Take it on.
Thank you, partner. Now, necessity is the mother of invention. With an expanding human population, we need more solutions to climate change. First of all, importantly, is education. Education is always the solution. Once you educate people on better practices, then we can save the environment better. Energy conservation. Recycle, reuse, and reduce is basically the main slogan for green energy. Green energy and renewables, it has actually been proven that they can actually boost the economy. And I feel that South Africa should actually use this opportunity as we have large amounts of solar, wind, tidal, green energy which we can use to the best of our capacity. Another thing is carbon sequestration. So basically, it's taking coal, using basically going underground and trying to extract coal, but in a more environmentally friendlier way. Hybrid cars, if you can afford, and sustainable development. Using our resources wisely so that future generations will have access to these resources. I think an important one is Earth system science. So looking at the Earth holistically, not only focusing on the physical sciences, but also focusing on all other professions. As we integrate all different professions, we can save the Earth better. Now, a summary of what we have just presented. We have tried to define what climate change is and its various aspects. We have defined two different epochs on Earth, which is the Holocene and the Anthropocene. We have described the Industrial Revolution and mentioned how it was a turning point in history for climate change. We have stated the impacts, as my wonderful co-partner did, and I've mentioned the mitigations and adaptations, the solutions to climate change. A quote by Confucius: "The man who moves a mountain begins by carrying away small stones." This is basically emphasizing that climate change is not going to be resolved in a few days or in a few years. We need to come together and make small changes so that long-term impacts, we won't feel the long-term impacts. And climate change could be something that we could resolve and find better answers to.
Zig Ziglar, lack of direction, not lack of time, is a problem. We all have 24-hour days. This is our time. As we are here, as my partner has said, that education is very important. So this is our time to take the knowledge that we have back to our communities, advocate for climate change. The small thing that you can do can make a great impact in our environment. So as the next thing will present about sustainable development, it's one of the things that can make us to conquer climate change.
Is climate change a phenomenon, or is it a mystery to be solved in the future?
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you very much, Samela and Nante. That was great. We really enjoyed it. You guys presented well. Any comments from the floor or questions? 1, 2, and
you're the first person to really do something different at the start and take on board that first 3 minutes. The first talk where really, the quote was interesting and different. I think it was a really nice response to my catch the first 3 minutes and the last 3 minutes. So I enjoyed that. And yeah, you work great as a team and just like the nice. There's just, for me, there's stuff missing to make it into a nice story. The first is, I think we should recap the greenhouse effect at the start to explain what climate change is. I know we've had it before, but find out whoever does the light and air talk, what slides they're using for it, get that and just say, as we learn in light and air, the atmosphere traps this, and now after this, then you go to the Industrial Revolution, putting more CO2 into and making more greenhouse effect. I think that link is really important to start the story. Then you have mitigation and adaptation, you don't explain them. You just go starting for examples of each. I think one slide is needed to say what is mitigation, what is adaptation. Those are the 2 key terms, right, in climate change response. So they need explaining. And then there's a thing called the stabilization wedges. It's one of the main theories that the IPCC are working on. And so my homework for you is there's a talk by Dr. Chris Ennis on this on the online course. It's not for an hour. You don't want to go on for an hour, but to get more ideas of what's the fill in the meat in the middle there to help you tell the story, I recommend you watch it. He's very good. And I think you guys could be better because I think he's British and he's not as good as presenting as you guys. So if you can get his content and present it as Africans to Africans, I think you'll do a better job.
Thank you guys for the very wonderful presentation, great teamwork, and I think I have to mention that when you ask to act as teams, find that people do the same thing. When people count, one person comes and talk, they just stop halfway, somebody goes back, they can do, I mean, you guys have been doing the same thing since the beginning. And I think it's good to make an effort to be different, to do something different. I think that was nice. And you guys speak very well. It was nice to put up arms here and there. And I'm not sure if I got the correct definition of carbon sequestration. Maybe one of you will prepare that. And also, I think this doesn't sound bad, but I think we like appeasing ourselves with big things that are far away from us. And I think we can make a difference locally. You said it. I think also when it comes to climate change, we try and touch that very well. Like, what can we do as individuals? What can we do locally, like in our homes? What can we do? And we'll talk about mitigation. And I think it was a very good presentation.
Wonderful job, wonderful partners. Good work, guys. I really enjoyed it. And then just to bring out what you just said earlier on, and I completely agree with you that I don't know if you meant it the way that I thought you meant it. When you said that in Africa, climate change is put up there, and they want us to keep on saving energy and saving electricity and reduce this while people are still suffering. And then if something should be up there that not everything's going to be the same, not Europe is going to be the same as Africa. They're rich, some, and then we are poor, and some of them. But then it's like that you shouldn't sort of do a cut and cookie cutter kind of thing with Europe and South Africa. So I really like that you really outlined that. Good work, guys. Thank you.
One very, very quick last one.
Yeah. It was perfect, but I was continuing to feel bad, and I think the game I would also like to do that and with known greenhouse gases. And also, I think maybe you can find better people than using Barack Obama and the Pope, because first, that's the U.S. and U.S. climate change conservation sustainable development. There's a lot of confidence, and also the Pope, science and religion. It's like need to people asking you guys more questions than me. I think with you instead of you. It was a really good decision.
Thank you very much. One last round of applause. Next up is Timbani and Zama, if I'm not mistaken, and they will be giving us a talk on sustainable development. Welcome to them, and we'll give them 5 minutes to set up. Yeah. Correction, I meant human population. Yes. Sorry. Sorry.
Right? Yes. So we just have a quick tea now. We have to have one talk lonely at the end. Okay,
That's a sustainable call.
I'm not goodbye.
20 past. We're going to discuss the tea, then we're going to be back in. Hey, everything's fun in possession. Hey, quick tea break, so you're going to stand up, go get tea. You don't have to leave. Oh,
What is going on in all these places? Man, it's cutting that was like, you know how you open it and then you
What is spaces, right?
no, all of a sudden, you will pull that which is
I wonder how you
center the words.
I think how do you say my name?
I selected yes, speaking just fine. I want to show you. I want my
But it's okay, this is it. But I'm just like, something you take back and something you take off. It's okay.
Well, I got it wrong in the beginning yesterday.
You get you out of that initially, yeah. It's not what's up on it.
I don't know when are we actually just giving our numbers or are we actually so when because you're meeting again tomorrow. Yeah. And you still need to unlock
But I think
yes, you still need to unlock
somehow.
for the
No, you don't.
Was that the last part? Yeah, okay, cool, thanks.
All these spaces here now.
So, who's I want to get again?
Hello. Oh, okay.
It's not like this on the edited version, it's just each one. And if you open it, it's just this. Please don't. Yeah, we asked them, we don't know what's going on. Because they said it wasn't like this. Please can't talk down. No,
I don't know, I've never used something like that. It's cool. Okay, Madam Chair.
Okay, so welcome to Zama and Tivani. They'll be presenting human population.
Yay!
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chabani Jama, and my partner next to me is Zamapen. We'll be taking you through the talk of human population. This is how we start our talk. Basically, human population is the number of people who are living on planet Earth. Since from the 17th to the 18th century, the human population showed an increase. Even to date, the population is estimated at 7.3 billion, and according to estimation that is made by the United Nations, in 2000, the population will be 11.2 billion. So you can tell from those figures that much of the Earth is permanently inhabited. You see, here this graph shows human population over human history. As you can see, this is a J-shaped graph which shows exponential growth. This one shows again slightly different from the previous one, but this one is more recent than the one before this one. So you can tell it today that the human population is actually increasing at a very rapid growth. Demography, like by its definition, is defined as like the study of human population. In this graph, it illustrates population growth. The pink one shows the world average population growth, and the green one shows the average population growth of less developed countries, and the blue one shows that of more developed regions. And the pink one is this one is of more developed regions. This one is a demographic transition graph. If you see here the birth rate and the death rate are equally, but they are both fluctuating. On stage 2, the birth rate is starting to go down, and the birth rate is actually maintaining a constant rate. But as on stage 3, the birth rate also decreases, as you can see, and the population growth is actually going up. This one shows total fertility rate, which is also a key determinant of determiner, so to say, of population. As you can see, the B1 shows the fertility rate of developed region, and the blue one shows that of the world population of the global fertility rate, and the green one shows that of less developed regions. And this one shows of life. This is a graph of life expectancy, like globally. This blue one graph here shows that of the world, and then the pink one of the most developed region, and the green one shows that of less developed regions. And now we'll hand over to my co-facilitator to explain more.
Thank you, Timbani. As my partner here had shown in the previous slide, the life expectancy in more developed countries is more, and in less developed countries, it is less. This graph, this age graph, shows that more clearly. As you can see, this is an example of a less developed country, it's Kenya. It shows that there's a rapid growth. As you can see, the youngsters, the youth, there's more young people, and there's less older people. The causes of that could be the fact that they cannot afford medicines, or they don't have access to medical facilities, and that they do not have the same advances in terms of development and science and technology as compared to the first world countries or the developed countries. This is a developed country, it's the United States. It has a slow growth. You can see there's a bulge in the middle. There's a lot of people in the working age between the ages of 20 and about 60 years old. So you can see that they are the most populated because there is advances in technology, and they also have access to various jobs and etc. Then we have a zero or decreased growth. This is Italy. As you can see, the female, especially the female column, the birth rate is actually lower than the death rate. So there is a decrease in that population in terms of that. So it's not the same in these other two. How I like to remember these three graphs is that this is the African booty. This is McDonald's because of the bulge in the center, and this is spaghetti since it's Italy after all. Okay, there's various factors that contribute to the population growing. So one of them is natality, and natality is the amount of people that are added to the population over a certain period of time through reproduction. We can think of the birth rate and the death rate. So if the birth rate is high and the death rate is low, obviously the population will grow. And also immigration, it doesn't actually have a contribution to the increase in population size in terms of the entire world, but it increases the population sizes of certain countries. If a person migrates to another country, that country's population increases, but the general population of the world doesn't really get affected. Some of the influences of this are the advances in technology, as I stated, and also the significant improvements in medicine. Okay, there are also factors that result in population decline. So we know that natural disasters happen in the world, and people unfortunately die in natural disasters. But a nice thing about this is that in South Africa, we don't actually have natural disasters that decline the population, which is a great thing. And we also don't have war. Wars actually do take away some people on the planet, unfortunately. And in South Africa, we gladly don't experience war. There's also birth control plans and laws. As in China, there's the one baby policy. Those actually help to control the population and sometimes even decrease it. In South Africa, we have the Joe Protection Campaign by the South African Department of Health. They encourage especially young people to use Joe Protection during sexual intercourse so that there's less babies being born, because we can see that, especially in the youth, there's a lot of young people giving birth and the population is increasing. But before we go to a video, we have a video to show you. We have a question. Do you think that with more women becoming more career-orientated and becoming more independent, or becoming less housewifey, less babies are being born? Okay, maybe we can answer this question over drinks later because of time, but yes, we really like an answer for this because we had a bit of a debate yesterday. So now we will show you a short video about some of the things that we have just said.
A 1,000 years ago, there were only 1/3 of a billion people, but we were multiplying. Now there's 7 billion of us. How did we grow so much so fast? Say this glass is North America. The fuller the glass gets, the more people there are. Water drips in as people are born. Water drips out as people die. Okay, here's the entire world. Now let's go back 1,000 years. The Americas are nearly empty. Europe and Africa have less than 100 million people between them. And just like today, most people live in China, India, and the rest of Asia. For centuries, things stayed pretty much the same. Births are canceled out by deaths. Women are having lots of babies, but most babies die before they grow up and have families of their own. We don't reach 1 billion until 1804. But things are changing. Better medicine and better agriculture are starting to slow the leak from the bottom of the glass. People still die, of course, but more babies grow up and have babies of their own. Lots of babies. We've grown from 1 billion to 7 billion, and it only took 200 years. Will we keep going like this? Probably not. The UN says we'll level out at 10 billion by the end of the century. So as we continue to grow from 7 billion, the question is, can the world hold that many people? Experts can't agree. It all depends on how well we manage our food, water, and energy.
Thank you. Yeah, no, thank you. Just a technical difficulty. Just experiencing some technical difficulties, but we will be resuming soon. All right, there we go. Okay. Since the population is increasing, as the video has shown, issues have arisen because of this. Firstly, the first issue is agriculture. The climate change group did mention that there is land that's being removed, and also the biodiversity group did mention that land is being removed to accommodate people and their needs, especially for farming and also for housing. And housing is actually next. Yes, as people become, as there's more people in the world, there's more people that require a house or a home to live in or shelter. And so we need to, there's been issues of removal of vegetation and also disruption of biodiversity through building of houses. And also industries, introduction of industries. The climate change duo mentioned that with humans being in the world, with the population increasing, the industries have also been increasing because there's a demand for people wanting more products, and so they need to be improved. And that all started during the Industrial Revolution, as they've mentioned. There's also a strain on the ecosystem services. The biodiversity duo mentioned that the biodiversity is important because it provides us with ecosystem services. So these are damaged. For example, to provide people with cultivation land, some wetlands have been drained out so that there is land to cultivate. Its wetlands provide us with a water cleaning service because they are a filter. There's also the issue of pollution due to the industry that I mentioned. But there's also socio-economic issues as well. Firstly, we have an African culture, if I could put it that way. In Africa, there's this culture of big families. The concept of nuclear families, of small families, is a Western concept. In Africa, we believe that more children mean that we have more labor on the land because we do agriculture. And also it's a source of insurance for parents. They believe that maybe there's a chance that one of them will go to school, get an education, get a job, maybe teach the younger ones. They also come up, so it's also a source of insurance. And the issue of poverty, the last two duos did mention the issue of poverty, that the debate of whether we're saving the environment or whether we take care of ourselves now because we're hungry is very big. With the population increasing, especially poverty-stricken people, the issue of poverty, it's growing as well. With the population increasing, poverty increases as well with poverty-stricken areas. And also the strain on country funds, because, for example, in South Africa, we have the RDP housing. There's people who don't have jobs, but they need housing. And so the government has to take out funds to build houses for them. We need to take out funds to give them social grants so that they can survive. Okay, just to recap on what we've just said, we've talked about, we like bombarded you with a lot of graphs about population demographies and how they vary in the various places in developing countries and developed countries. And there are factors that affect population growth and decline, and also mentioned the various factors, that these factors come with various issues. Lastly, what do we do about it? What do we do about this population growth? If you can see this picture clearly, it's a picture of people in traffic. They're all saying the exact same thing. You can't read what they're saying. If these idiots would just take a bus, I could be home by now. They're each saying the exact same thing. It's funny because they realize that there's a better way to travel. They realize that there's a more sustainable way to travel, but they choose to use their cars. This links to the issue of the tragedy of the commons, that we all want to use resources for ourselves at the time and use it to full capacity, not realizing that using that resource, and that the more people use that resource, it affects the general population. So, yes, that's all we have to say today concerning the population, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mary. Questions or comments from the floor? Yes, 1, 2, 3, 4. Do you have your hand up? No? So just 2 comments? Thank you.
No, I think this is a very good presentation. I think you guys did just I think this is a very important subject that normally around this discussion is not part of the science of science development. So, and I think the kind of things that you put in, some of them I think you didn't go in detail, but the kind of narrative that you're bringing into it are quite important questions to think about. So I have one question, but just one comment if I get it. So when you were talking about the population growth and so on, and about the different, you have 3 plots in each figure about 4 figures. So the figures will have the same color, and in the next slide you keep explaining that this one shows this one, like I think it's better to say, well, look, they're all the same color, and then just explain something else. I don't think from the second line it was no longer useful, whether that's true or because you didn't mention anything about what that might be. And the slides, the final slide about the videos. I think that's a very interesting question that I think we need to think about in many aspects of climate change, because I think there is a lot of projection that they should build, not be the understanding that we are all human, and I think we're all the same. We contribute to this practice is quite an investment. So I think that was important. But the question that I have is for the question where you show the distribution of population, the Kenya and so on. Now, my question is that so there is the African, I don't know what you call it, the bell-shaped kind of. So what do you think will happen in the future in terms of this? Will that, because that's so you explain how we got out this one here, and so it might seem like Kenya didn't exist. Now few people exist and they make more children, and there's not enough people that are growing. So like how is that sustainable? Do you think in the future is that true for the change? What are the actually models that will, do you think will actually change? And in terms of the American one, I don't understand how you have less children and like age. So perhaps it's just my, but I'm not getting. So I think if you can clarify it to me within a few words, how does that happen? So
Okay, with the African example, of the developing nations example, I think, let me use the example of South Africa. South Africa is compared to other African countries, it's better off, I feel. And as much as the rand is such right now, but we better, and we are growing, and I think other African countries will follow suit, hopefully. And I think in future the shape might change. Yeah, we should. But I think it will.
Is he asking
The shape.
the bottom is smaller than it.
Yeah.
So it seems like there are more people.
Oh, people talk about it.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure how to answer the Mary question. Can somebody help me in the audience?
There's a small place which means less than the school of the that. They are, as you're giving birth to small children, there's all ages in population really big. So there's less and less people dying in America. So these children grow with the population. There's the middle is not getting thinner because there's less kids.
We must have feedback rather than
So yeah, guys, the presentation is good. It's really good. I'm really impressed with the way you we gave you a lot of critique yesterday, and I'm really impressed at the way you bounced back. You bounced back and you were open to suggestions, and I could see that there was a lot of changes going on computer yesterday, and that's something to be proud of, and that's one character that you should be proud of. You know, to be able to humble yourself and actually take note and be willing to self and make another mistake. There's only one thing that I saw, and that was I don't know if you mentioned it in Jama. You didn't even go through the content slide. Like you some slides that you had, but you didn't talk about it.
There's a question of time, so I just skip that content slide when I went to the introduction.
I understand that when usually you are giving a talk, it's better than to not have a slide even though it's speak about it, than to just jump over slides. Do you know what I'm saying? So I understand the time matter, but I would have liked you to go through the content because that's the whole point of you go through the content, tell them exactly what to expect. Do you get what I'm saying? So yeah, that's just how it is. Thanks for this.
Just congratulate the previous three groups that have been largely on time. Last comment from the Sunday?
But obviously, I don't know if when representing who was our hands, our hands actually need to start. You are right.
Great. So I think they did. Okay, so next, thank you very much. Next, we will be welcoming Spanisa and Silungile to the stage. Sorry? Is it? What is going on?
Good day to you all. I am Silungile Dlamini and I'm here with my colleague Kelvin Pikarai, aka Gupta, and we are here to present on sustainable development. What we will be presenting on today is sustainable development, how it works, sustainability in the Anthropocene, looking to human population, the footprints sustainable energy, and what's special about South Africa, and the conclusion. So, sustainable development is development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of the future generations to meet their needs as well. So how sustainability works is that previously people used to actually think that the economy, you should think that, so you used to think that the economy is actually the actual means of only surviving, once they ignored the priorities such as the environment. So sustainable development tries to bring everything back and tries to advocate that the environment is actually important, and without the environment there can't be any economic stability, and there can't be any social stability, as the economy and society are dependent in the environment. Also, it tries to convey that sustainability is interdisciplinary in the fact that, as we've seen in the hierarchy of models, it brings on human population, demographics, sociology, geology, oceanography, yes, and also it brings biology. So it also tries to say that sustainable development it's not stopping development at all. As we are a developing country, we want to develop, but it's saying that, hey, how about we actually we actually develop in a sustainable manner. So I'll hand over to my colleague here to elaborate on sustainability in the Anthropocene.
Thank you, ma'am. I'll start by explaining Anthropocene. Anthropocene is actually a term that means a geological era when the human impact started affecting the Earth systems. Okay. So to explain that, linking human population, because human population is actually the first impact that started affecting the Earth, right? Like what I've said. I would like myself to explain to you what this guy called Robert Malthus. He lived around late 18th century. He actually proposed a theory that people, they reproduce in a geometric way, which is 2, me and her, we give birth to 2 people, we get to 4. Then 4, we go to 8. 8, 16, 32. As opposed to what? The way the earth can actually reproduce what? Food or the environment can actually reproduce itself. It reproduces itself in an arithmetic way, which is 1, 2, 3. So it means it's slow, but the human population is what? It's fast. So basically what I'm trying to say here, we're trying to link these 2 things so that we can have a sustainable way. So Robert Malthus, actually proposed what we call the positive checks and the negative checks. Let me start with the positive checks. The positive checks are things that can actually trigger more death rates. I know it might sound weird, but you are suggesting that it's actually a good thing for people to die. So people can die through things like war, famine, natural disasters. So you are saying that these things are necessary evil. Then obviously negative checks, these are things that we know. We educate people that you should try by all means to have few children, gender equality. We should empower women to also both work involved in our societies and avoid to have more children. And as you can see this picture, can any one of you guys give me one word to explain this picture? Only one word. Overload. For me, I would say frustration. You understand? As you can see, the earth is what do you call this? Human population keeps on increasing and increasing. You see, already the earth is not frustrated. So we need to deal with overpopulation so that we can have a sustainable environment.
So also sustainability in the Anthropocene, humans have had a great impact in climate change, though the definition for climate change is any long-term and significant change in the expected patterns of a specific region's average weather for an appropriately significant long period of time. So human beings have actually, during most industrialization, we have been emitting a lot of gases that actually accelerate climate change, thus leading to climate change being a threat to biodiversity and probably would lead to the extinction of flora and fauna because of the extreme changes in temperatures. It also leads to droughts. By droughts, people end up being malnutrition, especially in the developing countries such as South Africa. We are dependent on agricultural activities, whereby we find that our economy will also decline. So we fail to develop in a sustainable way. Also, floods lead to the disturbing of ecosystems and also lead to water shortages, whereby we find that there was a surplus of water, but it was also contaminated as floods carry a lot of unclean sediments with them. So my colleague will elaborate on adaptation strategies that could actually help people to deal with these issues sustainably.
Okay, thank you. Adaptation strategies of climate change, they can actually help us to have a sustainable way of life. Since climate change is thing that is affecting people time and again, and she gave you the impact, right? So I'm trying to give you some of the things that we can do for people to keep on living on our planet Earth, or for people to be more sustainable or to have sustainable livelihoods. Understand? So some of the things that we can do, number one, is education. We need to educate each other, like what we are doing here. Everyone is now aware about the issue of climate change. So we need to spread actually the gospel of what climate change to everyone, to know that climate change is something which is actually real. Understand? And secondly, we can harvest water. Harvest water, like let's say we're experiencing famines. Harvesting water is basically, we can create dams whereby we will receive rainwater, we can actually conserve water. Another thing that we can do is aquaculture. Aquaculture is basically, instead of keep on farming, we can resort to other forms of foods like things in the water. We can eat what we call it water lily. Those green stuff that you find in water. Some people, they actually eat that. Yes, exactly that. Yeah.
The ecological footprint is the measure of human impact on the environment. So this diagram shows that ecological footprint measures how fast we consume the resources and generate waste compared to how fast nature can absorb our waste and generate new resources. So how we consume resources is by the use of energy, by settlement, whereby we reduce the land, natural capital, by timber, whereby we actually deforestate and afforestate alien plants, and then also we need food and as well as seafood. So all of this, especially due to the large amount of population, puts a strain on the Earth's ecosystems. As we stand today, currently our ecological footprint is 1.6. So we need 1.6 Earth-like planets in order for us to actually live in a sustainable way. And another thing is carbon footprint, which is the amount of carbon dioxide emitted due to daily activities. And carbon footprint is actually a term that stems from ecological footprint, whereby you measure the carbon emissions per person. We can also measure it per year of each country or a person, whereby you measure how the daily activities, how they emit CO2 by probably the use of petrol, how industry produce products for us to consume, our waste, and probably for transport reasons, how cars, our private cars actually emit carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. So as we stand, the USA has 19.8 tons of CO2 per person, and Kenya has which is an example of the developing country, has 0.3 tons per person of CO2, which shows the contribution of developed countries and versus developing countries when it comes to contributing to the emissions of carbon footprint.
Okay, after what you said about carbon footprint, we'll be dealing with the issue of carbon dioxide, which is affecting the environment, the ecosystem, and biodiversity. So hence, there is now need for us to have a sustainable way of living that can actually help us to take the issue of carbon dioxide. So we've suggested some of these things that we can make use of to generate power. First of all, we can have solar energy, of which we are fortunate enough in South Africa. We've got solar farms in Northern Cape, a place called Uppington. Then biomass is another way that we can actually use to generate power. Biomass actually, biomass, organic material, we can actually use waste to generate power. Then wind energy, we have wind farms in Jeffreys Bay, Eastern Cape. Then sugarcane baggers is a way of generating power. We're using that fiber after crushing sugarcane to extract that sugar. We can actually convert that fiber to power. Then we've got landfill gas extraction, extracting that gas that is found down underground. We can actually say a sustainable way. Then in hydroelectric schemes, like as you know, most of the countries, even South Africa, they use hydroelectric power. Hydroelectric hydrates water. They generate electricity using water. So hence we should, after we have other things that I've mentioned up there, we try to reduce now the amount of water that we use. At least we have a small hydropower station, and we have other means of power. Then ISO, International Organization of Standardization, is actually one of the organizations that is trying to address today's global challenges on various things that are affecting the environment. So they are trying to convey the message to people to keep our environment more sustainable.
Okay, so moving on to our South Africa special, we have a lot of biodiversity firstly, and it also links to our ecosystems and linking to the HPW values, which one of them is diversity. We have our fynbos, we have the Cape Floristic Kingdom, we have subtropical forests, and we have savannas and grasslands, and this can help people study earth system sciences and actually for us to manage South Africa in a sustainable way and actually keep these for future generations. Also, our climate is very diverse in that we have a subtropical plateau, Mediterranean climate, we have plateau slope and subtropical climate, which is influenced by both the warm and the cold oceans that we have, and also the change in our landscape, how we move from flatland to mountainous areas such as the Drakensberg.
Okay, moving on to what makes South Africa a special place to start earth system sciences and sustainable development. It is important for us to make South Africa the best country among the whole world through the study of earth system sciences. Like, how many are we in here? We are many scientists in different fields, right? So it starts within South Africa. We don't have to adapt what America is doing, what Europe is doing. We use our ideas. So it begins with us. We put forward the idea of sustainability so that Africa can be a better place to be. In conclusion, I would say that for Earth to be habitable and for Earth to continue to be habitable, we will never separate or go away with the issue of sustainable development. Sustainable development and habitable planet, they go hand in hand. It's a hand to glove actually. You take your hand, you put in a glove. Understand? So it is very important. Then number two, it is important for us to conserve the Earth system. We have to reduce emission of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. As the carbon dioxide is actually one of the things that is triggering or accelerating climate change. And lastly, I would say, let's conserve our environment for the future generation, for our kids. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was perfectly on time. Any questions? Yeah, exactly on time. Any questions from the floor, comments, feedback, positivity? Not much negativity. Okay, number one. Number two. Anyone else? Okay, so we're starting with
a very good presentation, guys. How can I say it? But anyway, I just want you guys the graph demonstration that you had, about the footprint that you had. Maybe don't go there, it's fine. Maybe for your online presentation, maybe, I don't know, maybe because it will be showing properly in there, but then for now, I'm sitting here, you can't read what's in there. I'm in the front, and I don't know what people are. But then overall, guys, very good work.
Yeah, thank you. Very good presentation. And the last people at the end of the day, but you guys managed to keep us focused in the presentation. That's good for you. And then general comments for anyone in the house who present today. I've heard two people saying the paint was in the Cape Periodic Kingdom. Paint was in the type of vegetation that grows in the Cape Periodic Kingdom. So you can't have this and that, just this and that, so you can use one word.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Sandra.
That was a very wonderful presentation. Guys, and look forward to the if you share any response for having this to us. If you guys do as well. Like we talked about exactly that slide having maybe maybe not the only one find that nice and low, but it's also important, especially a story you were pointing at them, which is one of. Thank you.
Can I offer a solution to that? So you can either put a black background or you could actually read out what it says. So if people are unsure, you can just say, this is it, especially if you're on time. We've got that extra 5 seconds. Any other comments? Great, thank you very much.
Thank you to everybody watching at home.